Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with Us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we have a prompt from listener Iris. New listener, by the way. Welcome, and thank you for submitting your prompt. Remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, click the link and follow the instructions, and we will build your world, just like we're doing with Iris here. If you want to follow us on social media, by the way, you can always go to our Twitter at Let's World Build. You can always come join us on our Discord and chat with us about world building. You can come do our community world building projects, all sorts of cool stuff like that in the Discord. And if you're feeling particularly generous, or you just want access to those sweet, sweet patron-only episodes, you can give us money over on Patreon with a link for the Discord and the Patreon in the description of the episode. With that out of the way, let's get to the prompt. And the prompt itself is actually fairly scant, but the devil is really in the tenets. So I'm going to skip straight to the tenets. Number 1. The planet orbits around 14 different stars via teleportation. Number 2, a ringed green moon watches sometimes. I don't know what that means, and I'm intrigued. And number 3, and this is the one that really got me going here, the Catholic Church did it. So I really love the disparate parts of these tenets. I think that it is really fun, and I'm really excited to see what everyone here has to say about it. Daniel, were you ever Catholic?
No.
Okay. I thought that was going to be a good segue to get you to go into your tenets, but tell me your tenets anyway, non-Catholic Daniel.
I have been a lifelong atheist. I wanted to start with those stars. So my first tenet is the stars represent or contain the 14 apocryphal texts of an alien Bible.
Oh my God, I love this already, Daniel. Oh, it's so good.
I don't know what that means, but we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
That's where we come in, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've got apocryphal texts from, is it an alien Bible or is it the Earth Bible?
An alien Bible.
Fabulous. Okay. Oh man, we're off to a roaring good start. So Courtney, keep that engine running. What do we got for your tenet?
I think I can keep that going. So yeah, first off, I wanted to say that I love this prompt. When I was reading it, when it first came in with the first two tenets, it was like, okay, interesting. But that third tenet, when I read it, I just grinned. Like it's so out of left field that it was almost like an impromptu twist in a way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And right away, it gave me an idea for why all of this is happening. And I know that we've done quite a few apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic settings before. Mm-hmm. Bear with me on this because it's kind of on a different level.
Oh my.
And it's probably like multiple tenets in one.
Hey, I do that all the time and no one calls me out on it, so it's fine. It's a long established okay thing. It's a loophole that we do here.
Yeah. So my tenet is that the Catholic Church caused all of this by attempting to reach heaven, which somehow triggered the apocalypse as foretold in the book of Revelation in the Bible.
Yeah.
And the stuff that's happening and all that will happen can be tied back to the really bizarre ways that you can interpret that book. Like maybe that green moon is something from Revelation. It could be like the pale horse on which death rides, the fourth horseman, or it could be wormwood, which is a star and or angel that fell to the earth and poisoned water. There's a lot of weird imagery that we can bring in, which is a big part of why I wanted to use Revelation. It's just so insane and surreal.
I agree. I think Revelation is one of those books that are like really fascinating to read from like a religious perspective, because it is just like, this is wild. This is fairly okay up until Revelations, and it's like, oh shit, someone went hard on the paint with this last one.
Yeah,
it is my favorite book in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I kind of like Ecclesiastes because I find that to be like, you know, when you're dealing like death and stuff like that, I do find that to be kind of interesting.
What's the one with sometimes interpreted as a UFO, and this one of the people's Daniel? I forget. Oh no, Ezekiel. Which book is that?
I don't know my Bible.
That one I like too.
To give you an answer.
The last time I read anything from the Bible, I had to have been like, I don't know, 16.
I always enjoyed the biblical angels too, like the ones that are just wheels of wings and eyes. I'm like,
Yes,
those are
like
cool.
cherubim.
Yeah, and then
Very
we're not going to get into
horrifying.
that. Well, actually, we might need to get into the courts of angels because my prompt is demons tricked the Catholic Church into activating this gate after masquerading as a revived apostle.
Amazing.
I think it's all coming together.
It is.
So that seems to work. So we've got the Catholics trying to reach heaven, which you said caused the events of Revelation.
That was just an idea for like how they have triggered this, but it could, I feel, tie in with Rob's and that like the demons kind of tricked the church into
doing that,
supposedly reaching heaven, but in reality it opened whatever the fuck they.
Wait, so then what is your tenet exactly? If not what I just said.
Mine?
Yeah.
Oh, that like the Book of Revelation is what's happening.
Oh, okay. I see
Yeah.
what you mean. Okay, I heard the second part, which was like the most interesting. I really like that part. So I'm like, okay, that I think that works. Okay, so then the demons are kind of precipitating this, like having a false apostle. You said.
Correct. And
okay.
I want to clarify a little bit. When I mean demons, I might not necessarily mean demons from hell. I want to kind of take a little bit of inspiration from, like Black Mass. Not Black Mass. I always do this.
Midnight Mass.
Midnight Mass. I want to take some inspiration from Midnight Mass, which is like, there are like, it's how people interpret, the creature that we're viewing. So when I say demon, it might not necessarily be a demon, but some kind of weird skinwalker. I'm really open. I mean, if we want to go like straight up like biblical demons and stuff like that, totally cool. I just want to toss it out there that I'm not married to the idea of this thing being like a fucking devil. You know what I mean?
It could perhaps be the aliens that Daniel mentioned.
Potentially. I was thinking that, like that maybe it's even the apocryphal like prophet that has written this alien Bible in some way, like maybe it's coming back and it's like, hey, I've found these new never before seen texts from the Bible times, like there could be this whole there's a lot we could work with here, and my brain is already starting to get going. I can smell the smoke already. So Daniel, speaking of your alien Bible, why don't you keep us running here with your second tenet, sir?
She talks about this planet teleporting from among the 14 stars.
That's correct. Yes.
So I wanted to like kind of give some sanity to that. So what I said is the planet doesn't actually orbit the stars. What it does is it passes through a series of space-time corridors where each of these stars exist. So like as it moves through its orbit, it's really moving through different star systems. So it's like 14 different star systems where each of these stars individually is.
Okay, I thought that we were going to have a fight because I was like, I knew, Daniel, you were going to do something with the damn teleportation. I'm like, don't you dare. But because my second tenet is also like related to the teleportation.
Mine is as well, actually.
Son of a bitch. Okay, we're all going to have to go here.
We can make it all work together then.
I know, that's kind of the exciting bit for me.
My interest narratively is having 14 settings potentially.
Yes. So, I
yeah.
don't think that my tenet like takes that away. In fact, I'm just going to say mine now. The teleportations are actually massive magic gates that teleport the planet randomly around a different sun each time it passes through. So I'm interested in the idea that the people who are traveling around these 14 different suns cannot plan to be around a specific system.
It's an unpredictable orbit then, because the gates move them to different systems. So it has an orbit. It's just that, and the orbit is in some way dictated by the gravity of the bodies it orbits, but the gravity of the bodies it orbits at any given time is random because these gates, it passes into a different orbit each time randomly.
Right, and the gate is at fault for that.
Right.
So it's not like oh well, we passed through this particular planet, so that means that there's no pattern to it at all.
Right.
And again, cool. the other point that I want to emphasize there is magic gates. If we have to concede and be like, okay, it's actually just super advanced technology that's akin to magic, I'm willing to like die on that hill. That's fine. Actually, no, I'm not willing to die on that hill is what I mean to say. There's magic is what I'm suggesting rather than trying to do like a hard science to it. That's what I'm interested
So
in.
do you want to have something where it's a soft science? So it's more like Star Wars science?
Oh, that sounds, yeah, I can do that.
Because that has scientific, it kind of has an appeal to science fiction. It is science fiction, but it's just that it's not interested in the rules as much.
I figured that if we're dealing with the Catholic Church and we're dealing with angels and demons, like I wanted straight up fucking magic. You know, like I don't really care about the specifics. Maybe Courtney's teleportation related prompt can kind of.
I just like the idea of like when you have something that has a religious background, there could be a veneer of reason behind it that's maybe not explored, but could be explained. Like the show that I love recently that I've talked about a lot is Raised by Wolves, and it has a veneer of science behind it all, but it's also like strangely revelatory and magical. And I think this is perfect for that.
Daniel, one of these days I'm going to watch that show so I can know what the hell you're talking about.
It's really sorry. Didn't mean to impinge though, Courtney.
No, that's fine. So yeah, Courtney, guide us by the hips. Hit us with your second tenet and maybe give us a little bit more of a fleshed out feel for what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, I don't know if this is going to give us much guidance, and it's pretty similar to yours, Rob, but mine was that the transition between the 14 stars is not an easy, simple one. At the time when, writing this down, I didn't know what happened during those events, but basically I wanted it to be something uncontrolled, as you said, and dramatic in some way. So it's not just like they peacefully float into a new system. There's like some event that occurs.
That's fun.
Disrupts things.
That's cool, because that can tie into the whole revelation aspect of it. Like if each passage is like a big celestial moment that causes trauma to the planet, you could now have different phases of the planet's history as it passes through. Maybe the passings are big gulfs of time for all we know.
Right. And like each passing is like there's a harbinger that comes. Yeah. It's like, okay, this wave of good or evil or maybe even just neutral will happen to the planet as it passes through. That Courtney, that's a great idea.
I mean, if there's 14 stars and we said there's 14 books, apocryphal texts, maybe like each of the passings is related to one of the stars. So like the harbinger of each passing is like related to one of the books.
Can we position it so these apocryphal alien Bibles are also like maybe an addendum to Revelations,
Ooh,
because that's what apocryphal is, right? It's an extension of the Bible, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, maybe even the original book of Revelation was like an alien or demon inspired thing in this universe. And
jumping off of what you just said, what if the Bible is just a single piece of a larger Bible? Yes. Like we have the Earth Bible, but it's part of a larger, like bigger alien Bible.
Yeah,
these 14 pieces are steps towards the complete thing.
I mean, when you look at like the codices as they are, we have at least 3 Bibles, right? Because there is the Torah, there's the Jesus Bible, and then there's like Islam's interpretation with Muhammad. So it's like if you like run the spike of Abrahamic texts, we have like 3 core. I mean, why not? And then there's also like historical precedent that suggests that the Bhagavad Gita was actually a deep inspiration for the Abrahamic religions as well.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yes.
I mean, I was Googling, and there are, I think, depending on people's counts, between 14 and 17 apocryphal texts of the actual Bible.
And that's just of the actual quote unquote actual Bible, right?
Which I don't know. Maybe Iris was inspired by that because 14 is one number and 17 is another number they choose as counting them.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff that we could do with numerology as well. Like just deep diving off the fucking end with that, with just the numbers and stuff. Oh man, there's so much fun to be had with that,
Yeah, like 7 is a super frequently used number in the Bible and in Revelation, especially. There's 7 like everything in there.
Well, and to be clear, I mean like historians count either 14 or 17 actual books. Yeah. Like not a numerological number, but that there's this many, they just don't know how to divide them.
Right. I didn't want to like downplay that. I just wanted to also suggest that you could add in the craziness that is numerology,
No,
like,
I
because
was
there's
thinking
so
about
much
that
stuff there.
too, and reading the prompt and like thinking about Revelation, being like, can there be some connection between 14 and like all this crazy shit going on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's circle back to what Daniel was talking about,
Mm.
where I kind of like sidejacked it a little bit by talking about the historical stuff there, but the idea that these like religious texts are part of like a greater divine engine or a greater divine codex,
Super
we
cool.
really need to fucking talk about how cool that is, because
Yeah.
that's a great idea, and like maybe something that is like uniting or universal or something like that, or I don't know why I'm thinking that it powers some kind of divine or universal engine, but my brain goes there. So I'll let y'all step in and talk about what you're thinking about here.
I don't even know. There's just so much we could do with it. Like
So much.
I mean, you talk about these unpredictable doorways, right? That move us between the 14 systems. And you talk about divine engine, and I wonder if there's a relationship between the two of these texts. Do they shed light on the purpose or the way that this machine functions, this machine of the universe almost, right?
Right.
And it seems to be bad because we pass through it and there's cataclysms. But what do the books talk of a conclusion, and the way that Revelations talks about an end of the world? Is Revelations merely the first of the books? That talks about the first phase of this transition for the Earth or whatever planet we're on. I feel like they're related. This machine you're talking about, the books and the star systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the idea of Revelation as like the chapter 1 in this thing, or like the prequel to what these books describe.
Absolutely, because it's so often looked at as, the final text within Christian mythology. So the idea that this is the beginning is such a fun twist and a fun like no, I'm just going to stop there. It's just a fun twist to like the traditional mythology. I love it.
I think it's cool. And I also like how it can merge our thinking about the universe as a rational, natural thing, and it being designed in some way, right? So you can bring back God in a non-traditional sense, if you incorporate the religions of potential other civilizations that weren't part of the Earth. Like, I don't know even if this takes place on Earth. I assume it does, because we have Catholics and we have the Revelations. But we didn't decide that, so that's another question.
Yeah,
right. I was also thinking that this is definitely a traditional Earth, and historical me was like, I can bring it back to the Crusader times. And I'm like, no, don't do that. we already had one of those recently. It's fine. Just let it be sci-fi and magic. It's cool.
Well, so if we situate it, then we can set it at some indeterminate point in the future, because this is Revelations happening, right? I'm assuming this is maybe the first movement through the first doorway of the Earth is Revelations, and then we have, I guess, 13 more steps.
There's 13 more Revelations.
Yeah, is that what it is? Like, I don't know. Like, I'm just trying to. Where do we situate this? We know it's Earth. I'm assuming it's in the future, because Revelations is the kickoff, right? Unless we don't agree to that.
Well,
I'm fine.
I mean, I don't think it needs to, I'm not particular about the time period. So I'm also cool with it being like tomorrow for all I care.
Yeah, it could be literally, but it's just like, I'm just trying to understand, is this like the events of Revelations, or are we situating the setting after the events of Revelations and moving into the future of that?
That's a very good question. Well, based on our based on the tenets that we've brought, we know that it's random. So there's probably, I imagine that it's situated at least after the second cycle of these revelations that we're going through, right?
Because, so they know that it's a thing.
Right. That it is in fact random, and that they cannot prepare for it.
Yeah. So it's the second movement of Revelations, basically, is where we're at.
Which, oh my goodness, there's so much that I'm thinking about, like, that first pass through of like the 14 revelations, that is already like completely so far gone from what we know. Like, oh my goodness.
Do you mean
the
all
Earth that we know?
14 steps, or just like, that's what I'm trying to understand. Do you mean when you said the first pass through of all, so they've gone through all 14 books and now they're doing this again as a cycle, or is this like the second of 14? that we've gone through.
I think it might be easier from our perspective to like handle it as if the sort of Christian book of Revelation is like still happening and we haven't moved on yet. But it could still be passing through the different stars. Like I don't think that the stars themselves, I mean, I know that they are the sort of alien apocryphal texts, but I don't think that going to them necessarily means that they need to like activate right away, or maybe there's some weird stuff going on where like things are happening at the same time. But yeah, I don't think we need to like say that we're like way beyond the book of Revelation and we're dealing with like completely alien stuff just yet.
I was even thinking that if we wanted to focus on something that's relatively new in the journey, it could be something like we passed through the, like, let's say that they're through their fourth gate, but they've already done a repeat of one. So they recognize, wait a minute, there's no set pattern here, or something like that, where, or they maybe they go back and then skip. Like there's just something about it where I'm interested in this idea that that it's often up to interpretation as to what it all means, especially when we add in, revelations and whatnot, which is it is a very vague text in terms of what is available to be interpreted. So
can you say then, to keep preserve what you mean about it being random, can we say that there is a progression to 14? We just don't know which ones we're hitting in what order.
Yes.
Okay. That's what I was thinking. Right.
Right. And I think that maybe there is some kind of harmonic convergence that needs to happen where you go through a specific set of gates. And we could even, I mean, if we really wanted to play with it, there could be like a specific set of circumstances that need to happen that in order for you to go through the quote unquote correct path,
Yeah. One thing too is like thinking about how aliens might view time and consecutive events, like thinking about the movie Arrival and the short story that it was based on, Story of Your Life, where it's basically a linguist who learns a complete, like a literal alien language, and her whole way of thinking changes because they sort of see everything happening at the same time. And so I'm wondering if that's also what's happening here. Like the stuff that's in the book of Revelation, for example, is laid out in sequential order because that's how we as humans need to understand it. Like event A, event B, and so on. But maybe it's like can all just happen at once or at random. Like there's really no set order to it, or set like X needs to happen before Y. It can all sort of happen as needed.
Yeah, I'm also getting strong vibes of Kurt Vonnegut with Slaughterhouse 5. Where the man becomes unstuck in time and meets the Trafalgarians. I can never remember the name of the aliens. Where they see like, oh, we already see the end of the universe, right? Like we caused it when we tried to make a better version of air conditioning, like whatever it was.
I mean, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's almost like saying from the alien perspective, Revelations, like for us, means the end, right, or the transformation. But for them, Revelations might be a continuous process that isn't an end or a beginning. It's always happening, right? Which is to your point. And so traveling through these doorways in what seems like a random manner is really a transfiguration that's eternal, maybe for them.
Daniel, there's something that I was actually thinking about, like our last series that we did with our bugs that were that saw people slipping through dimensions and whatnot. I feel like them traveling through the gates, we could actually do that concept justice here as well, where maybe they are experiencing different modes of dimensional travel as they go through the different gates and whatnot. Like that's distinctly possible considering how weird these gates could be and how like we're approaching time already.
I think there's an opportunity definitely to have some kind of transformation, because like isn't Revelations, it's about transformation too, like, so I wonder if like going through these doorways fundamentally changes the world,
Yeah.
And what survives is, but maybe there's some perspective on the Earth that's struggling to remember and to survive the transformation, to kind of just to see if they can predict this, even though they know it's ultimately futile. Because these are, if the Bible is remnants of our past knowledge, right, and our attempts to make sense of the universe, like whatever this faction is that persists from these transfigurations, they must be trying to put the pieces together.
Have any of you read Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke?
No.
Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. Very, very readable novel as well. It's essentially the midwives of the universe come to Earth and try and prepare the human species to ascend into like a pure energy cosmic being,
But they look like demons,
but they look like biblical demons, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't recognize what we were doing with the demon stuff until I just said that, actually. But I think that when you are talking about going through those gates, Daniel, we're actually talking about like an ascendance, not to divinity, because I do want to like I'm more interested in like the mechanical aspect of that, where religious folks can probably interpret this as we're ascending to like heaven, but like what's actually happening is like an ascension to a higher plane of existence or a higher consciousness of existence,
I mean, it can be nefarious too, because, and again, I have to go back to Raised by Wolves. For those of you who may have been watching that, please watch it so HBO can make the 5 seasons we need. There's in that show, there's a nefarious sense of the intent of whatever divine being is actually out there. And from the perspective of the people in the show, it's quite horrific and it seems terrifying. But we don't really know its intentions or its goals. Like, just as a minimal spoiler, you might want to skip past this. Like, there's a character who's transformed into this
Hold on,
tree.
let me mute you real quick. Yeah.
The character is transformed to this tree, and it's utterly horrific and unexpected. Yet there's like this there's wonderment in that action, and it's really grotesque because this is Ridley Scott. And so I wonder what you're talking about, ascendance or transformation. That might not be a form of ascendance that we are familiar with or would approve of. And so that could give room for characters or factions in the story that are opposed to what's happening and really view, like you said, this apostle is demonic, and that's the cause of them being seen as demons.
I'm really interested in that. I love the theme that we're kind of digging at here, which is interpretation. I love the idea that the world essentially becomes completely split in terms of like, there are scientists who are going to try and figure it out. There are going to be religious folks who are like devout and continue to do to follow their religious doctrine. And then there's going to be a bunch of turmoil in the very middle, which is like, we don't know what's going on. There's panic. There's like uncertainty. Like, is God real now? Is this even God? Wait a minute. What's going on? Like, I think that to me is where the really interesting bits lie, is in the uncertainty.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just like looking at a summary of the Book of Revelation, like thinking of ways to pull random things in.
I'm looking back on the prompt.
Well,
I don't want to lose sight of the ringed green moon.
Yeah, as I was thinking about.
That's actually what I was about to circle back to. Yeah.
Like, maybe is that God that's watching? Like,
I don't know.
I'm less inclined to like talk about that as like some kind of like arbiter.
Yeah.
I'm really interested in talking about the giant green moon that watches, because the idea that it watches implies that it is somehow sentient, but it's also a moon. So what does that mean?
Moons orbit their companions, their satellites. I wonder if it implies something standing outside of this process that can observe it.
Right.
And so it could be a means of either escaping the process or like, sidestepping it. Like, of course, my mind as a sci-fi person goes to like a station or a place that people can operate from to, observe what's happening without being subject to transformation. But at least as a moon, it suggests A, being subordinate to something, and B, like you said, it watches, it's observing from a distance.
I mean, you're a sci-fi nerd. I'm a comic book nerd. So my brain, of course, goes to the Beyonder, who are like a class of people in the Marvel universe who are like cosmic beings who are basically there to observe and nothing more. And of course, in the comics, one of them like eventually interferes because they're like, I can't, like I've fallen in love with the people of Earth and I need to interfere because guess what? You're all fucked and you need to do something about it. But if we roll that back and like, I like what you're saying, Daniel, where it's like a weird observation tower or something like that, where it can be completely inorganic, or maybe it's an AI or something like that, where it's an AI the size of a moon that is like watching, or maybe this whole thing's a fucking experiment and they're just conducting the test. They're like, well, let's see what happens when we toss them through this gate,
It's the Vatican in space.
It's the Space Vatican, yeah.
And
isn't there a Futurama joke about the Space Pope? I'm pretty sure there's a Space Pope in Futurama.
Yeah, I feel like there is.
Well, it's not a GIF, so it doesn't count.
I do. I want to return, just for the sake of having solidity here, to we didn't really decide when this is happening, like not in a concrete sense, but in a general sense. We talked about, is it after Revelations? But then Courtney, you were saying we could have this happen during Revelations. That's not really completed. Is this happening after having passed through one or more gates? Is it happening before? When is the story that we're going to construct happening?
Maybe we should focus on like a time when it's like after the planet has traveled through at least one gate, but not like a ton of them. And maybe something is happening that causes humanity to realize like, oh, it's going to happen again very soon. And we need to like prepare for it in some way after what happened previously.
Can I suggest that we're on our 7th pass through a gate just to go there?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's enough passes through gates to recognize that it is seemingly random, but also enough where it's like we know that we need to prepare for something to happen.
Do we want the time scale of the narrative to be kind of Isaac Asimov-esque in the sense that we're passing gulfs of time and observing, from a higher vantage point? So like, instead of following a group of characters, you're really following organizations over time.
I think that's the sci-fi way to do it. Yeah. I think that oftentimes what I've recognized when it comes to like sci-fi stories is they're far less interested on individual characters and far more interested on the implications of everything going on, which means that you follow characters, but more importantly, you follow the story, like the legacy of what's happening. And I think I'm okay with that in this regard. I think that we can make it really interesting. But I think having it be on the 7th pass through is enough weird history, or there's enough weird history that we can dive into. And we can also, I think it's like a good like compromise between like, it's not the end. It's not the very beginning where things are all like really like complicated and like chaotic. It's like the 7th pass through there's enough time that has passed where factions have solidified and things have kind of like cooled down from the crucible, so to speak.
Have we missed any of the tenets that are in their prompt?
Well, I think that my guess, right, the one tenet that we really haven't addressed is the moon. I am inclined to roll some random dice and call that our world anchor, and that way we'll be able to force some kind of meaning on the moon itself with the aid of a twist and some weird dice rolls. What do y'all think about that?
That works for me.
Yeah, that's fine. I was just wondering, like, I know we haven't like just figured out what it is, but are there any tenets we haven't mentioned at all? Like we at least looked at all of them.
We've knocked out all the tenets so far. So I would like to, I like what we're doing here, where we're solidifying where we're going to be focusing our time and like lens at, essentially. We're going to come up with factions next time, obviously. But do we have any other questions that we want to engage in right now about the setting as we have it?
I think we know when it is now.
Yeah.
Right. A loose timeline of events.
Yeah,
I mean, again, I'm inclined to, when you say gulfs of time, Daniel, I'm inclined to say that like 77 years have passed, but again, like I think that's a bit too much. I think seventh cycle is fun, and in fact, I can even see that being the title of the book that we're writing here. It's like the seventh gate or the seventh cycle or something like that, and then we go from there. But in terms of gulfs of time, I'd say like anywhere between a couple of dozen to a couple hundred years of time have passed.
The reason why I said gulfs, and by that I mean hundreds, because we're talking about the events of Revelations, right? So like if that kind of trauma happens and there's like 12 years in between the next kind of trauma, you don't really have much room for civilization or reflection. So I think if we're going to have this is the seventh time this has happened, we might be talking like 700 plus years at this point. So then you're talking about organizations or beliefs that have morphed quite significantly. So whatever the Catholic Church may have been might be something very different now.
Oh, that's very true.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm also cool with like a 700-year time gap with each age and each gate being like not a hard and easy number. It's like every 100 years you
like
can expect
608 years later, and then 217. You never know.
Or,
it's random,
right? Or even something is like, we had 6 months in this world. I don't know what's going on.
I also imagine that it would become very difficult to track time if you're being like spat out into
that's very true.
Systems. Like that's gonna mess with things a lot too.
And we also have to figure out, after all of this, like, what does the setting look like? Like, is it, I have a feeling this is not a coherent society anymore. And it might be very strange, you could have it all be actually fantasy on the ground, right? Because it's so warped.
I don't know why, but I'm thinking of like pretty strict caste systems or countries or geographic areas that are split, not just in terms of geography, but in terms of like what they have available to them on any given basis. I'm thinking of like uber technocrats over here, and then you have like an oligarchy over this way, and then you have some kind of a deeply religious state over here, and they all have wildly different like wildly varying like levels of technology and advancement, but I'm concerned about that we get too much of a hodgepodge if I commit to something like that. You know what I mean?
I feel like in order for there to be an anchor between these ages, something has to persist.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's like the equivalent of in Dune, the religious order of the women, their name is escaping me at the moment, who are stitching together history. So I wonder if there's something like this, which might be a question for our factions in the next episode. But the societies, I feel like if the events of Revelation, something similar is happening every so often. You really have a breakdown of the order of things over and over again.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, even like the Four Horsemen, after I think the second seal is broken in Revelation, like each of them sort of gets control or power over a fourth of the earth, and like I imagine that like kind of breaking down even further over time as like more and more events happen.
And we don't know what if it's like, and I'm saying as a revelation each time, but it's like we don't even know what the trauma is passing from gate to gate. It could be as ridiculous as Revelations. It could be something completely different. Who knows?
And we say trauma, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a trauma. I mean, it could just be something that is like, this is a demonstrably beneficial thing that happens to the world or something like that. What I think might be really fun is if we each come to the next session with an idea of this is what happened during the passing of this age or this gate, so that way it's like, well, in mine, like the plague hit and then okay, hold on, we're already doing that one. In this one, like the world literally inverts on itself or something like wild and crazy like that. And then we kind of force ourselves to stitch together a shared history between the three ages or the three gates that we come up with and create. How do you all feel about that?
Yeah, that sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, that's cool.
Fabulous. Okay. All right. Let's. I feel like we're really nearing the cusp of the edge of this episode. I'm very excited. Is there anything else that we want to talk about before we wrap up and recap all of our tenets?
One thing that comes to mind with the repeated mentions of the number 7 is if there's a way to also tie this back to Genesis, like God creating
7 days.
the 7 days of creation. And I mean, obviously this is like, or we were talking about, it doesn't necessarily need to be like an end time kind of thing. What if it's like a continuation? Like things are just going to circle back around eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And like those 7 days of creation will happen or are currently happening or something to that effect.
I do like the idea of incorporating the meaning of Genesis. The only caution I have, and I feel like this is the thing we do far too often, is create cycles. You know, like cycles of history in our stories, and I'm just kind of generally tired of that, in the sense that like everything recurs over and over again.
Yes.
So whatever, if we do incorporate Genesis, I'd want it to be like part of a forward moving process that hasn't happened already. You know what I mean?
What if it's like sort of a version of the Great Flood, but on a cosmic level? Like God is basically hitting the reset button now, like slamming it down a bunch of times.
That could be cool. Yeah.
So we don't know what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I like that. Like I come back to that show that I love, but even that does this cycle thing, which I'm just like,
right.
You know, it's almost like a cheap way for a writer to get out of giving a reason. Instead of giving a reason, they say, well, it's happened before, there is no reason. And to me, that's like circular. So it's like it works sometimes and it's cool, but I just don't want to do it all the time.
Well, Daniel, endings are hard. I don't know. You should know this as a writer. Endings are very difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
So when you have cyclical imagery and a cyclical nature of a story, you never have to end it. You never have to get Stephen King'd. It's fine. You're good to go.
Like sometimes I just, even if there's not an ending, I'd rather have no ending than it to say like, oh, the ending is the beginning. Haha, it's a circle, you know?
I agree and disagree because I've seen it done remarkably well. However, I see what you mean by you're afraid of it becoming cliche.
I mean, at least for us, like we've done it a lot, you know.
Yeah. I think it's because I do have a penchant for stealing something that I do enjoy. So yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm okay with that. However, I can't help but think that there is no ending for what we're looking at here. Like the setting is in fact just the beginning of something else, right? Like,
yeah, we don't have to have an ending. I just mean like, I don't want our solution to this to say that it's a cycle, right?
I gotcha, yeah.
Because we've done
you don't want it to repeat
times.
Is what you're suggesting.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't, if these 14 events are 14 events, like whether they happened in the past, I don't want to know or have to be part of the narrative because I feel like it cheapens the narrative we're enduring at the moment.
I'm okay with that. Like the idea that there's 14 of these suns in 14 of these cycles, like the people on Earth have no idea that that's coming. Right. Okay, cool. I'm okay with that. Yeah, I can support that fully, 100%. Also, I do like the idea of watching this civilization kind of like persist throughout all of this, because this is one thing that I've been somewhat interested in lately, considering, you know, like the doom that is coming, that is climate change, you know, that I feel pretty constantly. I can't help but think that, like, yes, it is coming. Yes, it will be catastrophic. I can't help but think that we as a species will most likely persist just in a way that we do not recognize as we are now. You know, maybe that's a bit hopeful for you, Courtney. I know it probably is, but it's at least something that I'm interested in kind of thinking about, you know?
No, I think that we will persist. It's just going to be in a very different form, and a lot of terrible things are going to happen beforehand.
But there's a good chance of it happening. Absolutely.
For the record, I think we will all die. So I'm glad that I only have to be alive for, I don't know, 70 years.
If that.
If I get there. Yeah.
I mean, that's why I think it's really important for everyone out there to like really cherish the experiences that we have now. You know, like this is a good life that you got going on here. You know, you might not feel it Trust me, as a depressive person, I don't feel it every day, but I also am trying my best to cherish the experiences of the now as much as possible. And with that out of the way, let's circle back and talk about each tenant and make sure that it makes sense with everything that we've going on. Let's go with the tenant recap. All right. Daniel, you started us off this episode. What was your first tenant?
That we have 14. The stars represent or contain the 14 apocryphal texts of an alien Bible.
I feel like we've pretty well established that. I feel like that's good so far, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I think we concluded that our Bible is an extension of some larger text.
Yeah, or like the prequel to it, or
yes,
it fits in some way.
Yeah. This is the prelude. This is like the scene before the actual story. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Courtney, your first tenant?
That the Catholic Church made all this happen possibly by attempting to reach heaven, and that triggered the apocalypse as foretold in the book of Revelation.
Did we? I don't think that we really satisfied that aspect of it necessarily, where that getting to heaven thing, like it's the Catholic Church's fault. I feel like that's kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit here as we talk about like the more cosmic scale of what's going on. I mean, I think that we've satisfied the tenant for sure, but I'm also interested in this idea of like, we should talk about that a little bit more, I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like it tied in with another one of your tenets about, what was it? Oh, just the aliens in general, or also your demons, Rob. Like something about maybe they encouraged the church to maybe develop something or go through with some ceremony that tried to basically open up access to heaven, and that is what did all this.
I just recognized that we are literally trying to open Heaven's Gate here, and and we have aliens potentially involved. So I don't know what to make of that. Make of that what you will, you know.
I think her tenant is kind of implicit in the whole situation,
right?
Because the Bible could be seen as being precipitated by these demons or aliens, or more specifically, if you want to say the first movement, Revelations itself, doesn't it have like a fake apostle, like a demon, is the equivalent of the devil, that's heralded to occur? And I feel like if you wanted to interpret that as the first step of opening up heaven, because it's a false heaven, could be a way of interpreting it.
And this is where my tenant comes in, which is a demon tricked the Catholic Church into activating this gate after masquerading as a revived apostle. So I think that those work. I think Courtney and I go together like peanut butter and jelly for sure.
With the second coming of Christ, you know, all of that could be a bad thing that we don't realize, you know.
Let's loop back around. Daniel, your second tenant.
The planet doesn't actually orbit any of the stars. It passes through a series of space-time corridors or wormholes where each of these star systems actually exist.
Right. Right. All of our tenants second tenants related to the teleportation aspect.
Yeah. Which is the same as your portals. It's just that it seems like your portals gives more explanations how it functions.
Right. Yeah. Mine are giant magical gates that push the planet seemingly at random through, so there's no set pattern that we can recognize.
It could be one, in fact, to that point, it could be one gate because it takes you to a different place each time. And if you have a revolution of a planet, imagine our planet circling our star. If there were a portal in its orbit and you pass through the portal and you end up in a different system orbiting a different star, the portal would still be where it is and you'd still be in the same orbit. The only difference would be that the star, depending on how big the star is, it would have to shift out that orbit, but it could work that way where it's just really one portal, but there's 14 jumps that it can do.
Interesting. And then scientists and whatnot can suss out, okay, we have to do one rotation to get back to the portal. And then that's the age. We're going to be here for X amount of years or whatever it might be, you know?
And you could finagle, depending on the orbit, we're ignoring for the moment the Goldilocks zone and that we would die if our orbits were different.
Obviously, yes.
But if the orbit's large enough, you could have a much larger passage of time,
Or I wonder if it could be tied in with the green moon somehow. Like,
oh yeah.
Since that only appears sometimes, maybe that's the unpredictable part of it, where you'll have gone around a sun like 30 times, and you're wondering.
Oh, and then you see the moon.
Then you see the moon, and it's like, fuck.
I like that. Then the portal opens.
Yeah.
Okay, that gives us more room and time, because you can have lots of revolutions, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when the moon appears, that means the doorway is open and you're fucked.
Yeah.
It's always an omen moon. Yeah, it's
fucking
like,
love that.
Jesus. Yeah.
Oh,
that's good.
terrifying.
That's really good. I like that.
That's some blood stuff from Courtney right there.
Yeah. Yeah, you got your drop of blood, Courtney. Don't worry.
Perfect. And yeah, my second tenet was also that I didn't want it to be like an easy, simple transition between the suns. I wanted it to be something dramatic and also uncontrolled, like Rob, you had said.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we've certainly, without giving the specifics of each like major revelation of the revolution, we do have that, I think, involved here, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh yeah. I'm sure we're gonna have blood rain and I don't know, like man-eating furries and
black
oceans of acid.
All that good stuff. I mean, I do feel like even just switching to another star system could be like enormously traumatic for the planet. Like,
that could be if you want to do straight sci-fi.
And like,
we also haven't even talked about the potential for another sentient race of people, like we're just passing, like 2 planets passing in the night, like, oh hey, look, their planets fuck too, how about that?
Oh god, you're right. Like if you end up in a different star system and it happens to have other planets, now you have cosmic war or interstellar war. It has a lot of potential is what we're doing here. I love it. But I just want to underscore too what Courtney was saying, like just being in a different system, like if we're gonna respect any of the celestial rules, any of physical rules, if these orbits aren't in a specific place, you're talking about the complete death of everything on the planet every time they shift. So there has to be something special about the way these orbits are arranged in each system for everyone not to immediately die.
Magic, like I said, magic.
Something about
the green moon.
The green moon. It's like a protector, but also sort of making all of this happen.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, and it could be simple. If this was designed, you could have it such that the sizes of the stars are different, so that the orbits could be different, and this keep you in the Goldilocks zone.
That's exactly what I was thinking as well, is that they would be wildly varying in size and rotation and all that good stuff, with a little bit of softness tossed in with like, it's a magic gate, so you don't immediately fucking die whenever you pass through it, but horrible shit's gonna happen to you, so there's a little bit of that, just saying. There's also something I think kind of fun where I'm kind of interested to see if, as the people recognize that they're approaching that gate and they're going to pass through it this time for sure, what do the parties on Earth look like during that time? Like, is it a truly apocalyptic party where it's like all your inhibitions go out, you're putting things in holes you didn't know existed, like you're just doing stuff, it's like a purge night basically, right? Or is it just like, you're just sitting there quietly, like expecting, like we've just got to endure,
I could see that just being totally different based on faction and country. Like some people just go all out bacchanalia, other people are like hiding away in fallout shelters essentially. Other people are probably committing mass suicide because they don't want to experience that again. So who knows?
In some cycles, everyone is a fish person, so they just go under the water.
That Dagon would be happy. I'm sure. All right, I think we've wrapped up the tenets part, right? I think we've got everything nailed down. We've got everything like locked in. I think it's time to roll a twist and see what we get here. How do y'all feel about that?
I'm very curious what this is going to be.
Let's see. What are some good ones here? We've still got add in some undead. Culture. Well, this is just a given. Culture going to be involved anyway. Courtney's favorite, now go super dark with it. There you go. add dinosaurs. Look, there's so many like different spices we can toss in. Let's roll a die and see what we get. My dear friends, our twist for the next episode is, and now add in some robots.
Oh, nice.
Wow.
Wow.
I was not expecting that.
Well, we've got robots on the table.
Yeah.
So again, we will approach we'll each come to next episode with some revelation, some apocalyptic thing that, or something that changes the landscape wildly. It's the thing that happens as we pass through the gate, right? That's where we're approaching next episode. And we're also going to have to figure out where all those robots came from.
I love it.
Absolutely. And with that, I think that's going to do it for this episode of World Build with us. And remember that if you want us to build your world like we did with Iris, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, follow the link in the instructions, and we'll build your world, just like we did here. Again, a big thank you to Iris for submitting this really fun and interesting prompt. It's always great to see new listeners submitting prompts here. Really fun. If you want to follow us on social media, go to Twitter and follow @Let'sWorldBuild. That's us. You can do whatever you want on it with it. It's fine. If you want to come join our Discord where we have all sorts of fun world building chats or just chats about whatever we want, follow the link in the description for that. And if you're feeling particularly generous or you just want access to our sweet, sweet patron-only episodes, follow the link in the description for our Patreon, where we do all sorts of cool stuff with that. And that's enough of my blathering and chilling. That's the end of the episode. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. Until next week.